A jarring metallic crash echoed through the room, powerful enough to rattle the steel door of the isolation kennel. The gray and white German shepherd slammed into the crate door with desperate force, teeth gnashing until they drew blood. It had just attacked an animal control officer, and the order for immediate euthanasia had already been signed. In that chaotic moment, Ryder Maddox, a Hells Angels Fresno Chapter member who'd lived in seclusion in the Kern River Valley for 10 years and never once stopped his Harley-turned-pickup for anything, suddenly killed the engine in the middle of the road. He walked straight over, ignoring the shouting officer ordering him to leave the area, and just stared at the panicked dog. His face went pale when he saw the name on the red warning sign, Blitz. Ryder didn't see a crazed animal. He recognized something painfully familiar, the eyes of a survivor of torture, the same eyes he'd seen in Rocco, his old dog, right before it threw itself in front of a shotgun blast during that ambush years ago. The silence in Ryder's remote log cabin wasn't just the absence of sound, it was a tangible thing, thick and heavy like 10 years of accumulated ash from solitude. Only the crackle of the wood stove in winter and the hoarse growl of his old truck broke that silence, and even those sounds came only a few times a year. But today the sound that shattered the silence inside him didn't come from that cabin. It came from the eyes of the wild dog slamming against the bars in front of him. Meredith Lane, 31, Kern County Animal Services veterinary technician, hurried over when she saw Ryder standing in front of Blitz's cage, her voice tight as a fraying wire. "You shouldn't get that close. He's scheduled for euthanasia within the week. He's too dangerous now." Ryder didn't answer. He just studied Blitz with an expression Meredith had never seen on anyone, an expression belonging to someone who'd spent a lifetime beside guard dogs in the biker world, where survival instinct cuts sharper than a blade. Blitz growled when David appeared, making the man back against the wall. David quickly explained, as if justifying the fear on his face, "He bit a potential adopter, nearly broke my arm last week. He's completely out of control." Ryder watched every movement closely. Blitz's ears pinned flat, pupils pinpricked, legs trembling, but weight shifted forward, ready to lunge. That wasn't the reaction of a family pet. It was the reaction of a cornered warrior. He spoke softly, loud enough for the room to hear. He was trained to attack. The Temecula cartel liked training dogs this way. Meredith startled. "How do you know?" Ryder didn't reply. Inside his head the image of Rocco flashed. The dog that once stood between him and the Diablo Rider's guns, eyes burning with the exact same determination Blitz had now. A sharp pain stabbed his chest as memories of that old ambush flooded back. Gunshots, Rocco's faint whine, Ryder screaming into the blood-soaked Fresno night. Meredith looked at Ryder, then at Blitz, then pulled a red-labeled file from a drawer. "You should know this." Inside were the details. Blitz had been seized by the DEA in a Temecula drug warehouse raid, then given to a new owner who chained him inside a metal drum, shocked his neck every time he barked, and beat him to keep him mean. The scars on Blitz's body matched the description perfectly. Ryder clenched his fist lightly, then exhaled. "He's not crazy. He just learned the wrong lessons from the wrong people." Meredith fell silent. For the first time, she didn't argue. Ryder slowly approached the cage, then sat down on the cold concrete floor. He deliberately avoided eye contact, keeping his shoulders and breathing steady. Blitz growled a few more times, but the growls turned into heavy panting. His tail lowered, the rigid body began to soften. Meredith watched without blinking. For months Blitz had never calmed down for anyone. But in front of Ryder, he stopped. As if two souls the world had treated brutally had just recognized each other in that cramped, damp room. And in that silent moment, the bond between a lost Hells Angel and an abandoned war dog began to form, quietly, but as strong as an unspoken promise. Ryder returned to the shelter the next morning. After, with one thing in hand, an old folding chair, the kind bikers carry to sit around campfires after long rides. Meredith frowned when she saw it. "What are you planning to do with that?" Ryder didn't answer. He walked past her straight into isolation, where Blitz was once again slamming his tail against the cage like he might break it. Ryder opened the outer gate, set the chair exactly 1 meter away, and sat, no eye contact, no provocative movements. Meredith watched from behind the glass, confused but unwilling to stop him. After all, he was the first person Blitz hadn't tried to kill on sight. Ryder sat motionless like a rock. Blitz did the opposite. He roared, hurled himself at the bars, teeth grinding, drool flying with every impact. He spun, jumped, backed up, and charged again, like a lost soul trying to escape darkness. For the first 10 minutes the noise was deafening. David covered his ears, but Ryder didn't move, didn't even shift posture. He closed his eyes, breathing slow and deep as if sitting in a quiet desert instead of in front of a raging animal. Meredith watched, unable to comprehend. She'd seen professional trainers work with Blitz and give up almost immediately. One nearly lost a finger. Another recommended early euthanasia for public safety. Yet this man a Hells Angel society had always feared was sitting there calm as if he understood Blitz better than anyone. Time crawled. 20 minutes. 30. 50. Blitz still growled, but the growls lost their edge, becoming hoarse and broken as his breathing grew labored. His coat was soaked with sweat, chest heaving, hind legs shaking from exhaustion. But Ryder stayed perfectly still. No movement, no words, no glance. His silence was so powerful it felt tangible, like a thick blanket thrown over the storm inside the dog's mind. At the 60th minute, Blitz suddenly froze. No more growling. He just stood there, ears slightly drooped, eyes still bright but no longer blood red. He stared at Ryder, not with murderous rage but wary confusion, as if trying to decode this man. Why isn't he afraid? Why doesn't he react? Why isn't he like the ones who beat me? Meredith got goosebumps. She'd worked with animals almost 10 years and had never seen a broken war dog stop just because someone was present. No food, no commands, no petting, just sitting, and silence. Ryder opened his eyes, looked at the floor, never directly at Blitz, the no-conflict tactic he'd used with the club's guard dogs that had seen too much violence to trust touch. He saw Blitz's breathing even out, shifting from frantic to slow and steady as the body self-regulated. When Ryder shifted his numb legs slightly, Blitz didn't lunge, he just shifted his weight, watching but not attacking. A huge step, a priceless signal for a soul broken too many times. Meredith whispered from behind the glass. "Why is he responding to you like this?" Ryder didn't answer. He didn't need to. The answer lay deep in Blitz's eyes, and in his own soul. Two creatures driven into the darkest corners of life could recognize each other without a word. When Blitz finally lay down for the first time since Ryder arrived, head on the ground, eyes open but no longer aggressive, Ryder whispered, voice low and gravelly like wind-worn sand. "I'll be back tomorrow." Blitz didn't growl or whine, he just watched, breathing slow as if weighing something he didn't fully understand. But Meredith understood one thing. A thread had begun to form. A thread no one in the shelter, not even her, knew where it would lead. But for Ryder and Blitz, two forgotten survivors, that was the beginning of something very big. Day 2. Ryder returned with the same old chair, and walked into isolation before any staff could object. Blitz was already waiting at the front of the cage like a trembling shadow, golden eyes wary. The moment Ryder set the chair and sat, Blitz exploded like a long compressed dynamite. He slammed the bars, roared with hoarse fury. Each impact so hard Meredith cried out, "He's going to break his teeth." But Ryder maintained absolute silence. No signals, no resistance, no threats. He just sat, breathing steady, hands relaxed on his knees like a boulder in a storm. After the first 10 frenzied minutes, Blitz began to slow. The growls lost their metallic edge, becoming broken and arrhythmic. By minute 20, he only paced the cage, glancing at Ryder instead of charging. By minute 30, Blitz sat for the first time. Meredith checked her watch. Then Ryder, "He clearly remembers you," she said quietly, though she didn't really believe her own words. It wasn't memory, it was recognition. Recognition of something Meredith hadn't yet defined. But Blitz reacted to Ryder completely differently than to anyone else. On day 3, strange things started happening. When Ryder entered, Blitz didn't charge immediately. He waited for Ryder to sit, then circled as if assessing the situation, no longer biting or head-butting the bars. Meredith, watching from outside, noticed Ryder's lips moving almost imperceptibly. She stepped closer and froze when she realized it wasn't English. Sitz, Blitz, Ruhig, low, even German commands, like someone who'd spoken them hundreds of times. Blitz's neck twitched at the first command, then he froze at the second. He didn't obey, but he clearly recognized the sounds. "Those are police dog commands," Meredith whispered, stunned. Ryder didn't look at her, eyes still on the floor to avoid direct contact. Temecula cartel used German and Spanish for warehouse guard dogs. It's been years, but the reflexes don't disappear. When Ryder switched to Spanish, firm, no mas, Blitz tilted his head slightly, a conditioned response from years of forced training. Meredith gasped. "You speak both?" Ryder shrugged. On the road, survival matters more than language. In truth, that was an understatement. He'd worked with the club's support dogs, taught them to recognize danger in bloody confrontations. Rocco had learned those same commands from Ryder. Now Blitz was mirroring his past like a ghost returned. Near the end of day 3, a small miracle happened. Ryder shifted because his legs were numb after nearly an hour motionless. Normally any movement made Blitz explode. This time he only grew alert, then lowered his head to the ground. Not fully down, not surrender, but the first sign of conditional trust. Meredith covered her mouth to hide a gasp. "I've never seen him do that," she said. "Not for anyone." Ryder didn't reply, but his eyes softened. He knew what it meant. A war dog that had lost all faith in humans would never voluntarily lower its head unless it felt relatively safe, and Blitz had just done it in front of him. Right then David walked in with keys jangling. He clumsily dropped them. The sharp metallic clatter rang out, the exact trigger that usually sent Blitz berserk, the same sound his old owner made, dragging him from the drum before shocking his neck. Blitz shot upright. Meredith panicked. David backed away, gasping. But what happened next left them both speechless. Blitz didn't charge the bars or roar. He turned and placed himself between Ryder and the noise. Protective instinct, as if he thought Ryder might be in danger. Ryder recognized it instantly. He lowered his voice. "Rook, Rug, Junge." Blitz stood rigid but didn't attack. Then slowly, very slowly, he turned back and looked at Ryder. For the first time, not the look of a cornered animal, but the look of someone trying to decide who was truly on his side. Meredith clenched her hands. "My God, he just protected you." Ryder gave a small nod. He didn't smile, but something flickered in his eyes, a tiny flame reignited after years extinguished. In that moment, Meredith understood what she'd once thought insane. Ryder Maddox might be the only person left on Earth capable of saving Blitz. And in the silent gaze between two survivors, she knew for certain this was no longer just about saving one dog. This was the journey to save two souls. Life had torn apart, and every passing day was pulling them closer. On the afternoon of day 4, Meredith called Ryder into the small office behind records. Blitz was calmer than any previous day. She closed the door, pulled out a thick, dog-eared file. "You need to see this," she said, sliding it across. The first page read in bold behavioral decline, 18 months tracking. Ryder opened it and felt his chest tighten. Charts, notes, monthly behavior assessments, anxiety spikes, aggressive reactions, defensive behavior, shutdown periods, and frantic staff notes about every sound-triggered meltdown. Meredith pointed to dense red marks. "See, this is when he was transferred after the DEA seizure in Temecula. The new owner kept him 3 months. He used shock to control him. Blitz had a severe behavioral crash in week 5. Ryder turned the page. Photos of Blitz's back with patchy fur loss at repeated shock sites. "That guy didn't keep him," Meredith continued, voice shaking with anger. "He tortured him." Ryder said nothing, but his knuckles went white. Next page. Second owner, a man near the Arizona border. 4 months, 3 cracked ribs, vet notes, misalignment from blunt force or kicking. The following page was worse. Clean 3, 4 centimeters lacerations, high probability small blade. Ryder took a deep breath. He remembered Rocco, the night in Fresno when Rocco took a knife to the shoulder lunging at a Diablo rider about to gut Ryder. He'd carried Rocco to a 24-hour vet at 3 a.m. He still remembered the blood-soaking black fur. He still remembered the blood-soaking black fur while Rocco tried to lift his head as if to say, "I'm okay, worry about yourself." Now looking at Blitz, even though it wasn't Rocco, felt like that memory living again in another body. Meredith turned another page. Third owner, only 6 weeks. Report returned due to uncontrollable aggression, but clipped behind was a confidential assessment, suspected use of rubber mallet to discipline, Blitz for disobedience. X-rays showed a healed but misaligned shoulder fracture. Ryder could almost hear his heartbeat in his ears. He had to breathe deeply to keep from raging. Blitz hadn't just been abused, he'd been used, exploited, broken and passed around like a defective tool. Meredith watched Ryder's clenched jaw. "You okay?" Ryder closed the file slowly, as if a sudden move would tear it. "I'm fine," he said, voice low with suppressed fury. Blitz lay in his kennel, head on forepaws, looking at Ryder not with aggression, but with an expression Meredith had never seen. An expression of a creature realizing someone finally saw its pain. The look of one exhausted warrior recognizing another. "He can feel you're angry for him." Meredith said quietly. Ryder stood and walked to isolation. When he appeared, Blitz raised his head. No growl, no retreat, no lunge, just watching. Ryder knelt in front of the door, not reaching in but lowering himself to remove pressure. He spoke in a hoarse whisper. "You went through hell, didn't you, kid? I know that feeling." Blitz tilted his head, ears twitching. Attention, not threat. Ryder felt a spasm in his chest, the same feeling he'd buried with Rocco's death. A connection too fast, too strong. He gripped the concrete to stay calm. Meredith stood behind, hugging the file, voice barely a breath. It's been so long since he's been this calm. No one's ever quieted him. No one. Ryder didn't look away from Blitz, but he spoke, low and clear as a vow. "I won't let him die here." Meredith raised an eyebrow. "What?" Ryder stood, eyes hardening like steel. "He's not crazy," he repeated. "He just learned the wrong lessons from the wrong people. Now it's time he learns again from scratch." He turned to Meredith, voice fierce but not aggressive. "I'll save him no matter what it takes." Meredith wanted to ask how, but when she saw Blitz, once the shelter's terror, lying calm, eyes following Ryder like he was the only one it understood, she knew the question no longer mattered. In that strange moment, among disinfectant smell, ventilation fans, and cold fluorescent light, two battered creatures looked at each other through iron bars, not as guard and prisoner, but as two souls recognizing the same ruin inside themselves. And Meredith understood the battle to save Blitz had begun, and Ryder Maddox was the first man brutal enough to survive, yet gentle enough to heal. That afternoon, as Ryder stepped out of isolation after another hour with Blitz, David appeared in the hallway, pale, clutching papers. He looked at Ryder like he was a bomb about to go off. "We have a problem," David said, voice shaking. Meredith emerged from the office, saw the familiar pale yellow paper and frowned. "Don't tell me that's from the county board." David nodded, swallowed hard, and handed the notice to Ryder. Bold letters like a death sentence. Mandatory euthanasia scheduled 7 days. Exceptions only upon demonstrated public handling compliance. Ryder felt like he'd been punched in the chest. He read it again slowly, hoping the words would change. They didn't. Blitz had 1 week to live. 7 days for a soul that had only yesterday begun to trust him, that had lowered its head like fragile hope. Meredith explained, angry and desperate. "The county's scared he's too aggressive. Recent attacks in the facility got media attention. They won't take the risk." David added, "Unless he can prove, public control." Ryder tilted his head, eyes sharp as knives. "What kind?" Meredith flipped to the attachment. "Her policy. A dangerous dog can avoid euthanasia if he demonstrates 3 things: accepts a muzzle, walks on leash without attacking, and can leave the kennel without losing control." David panicked. "Impossible. Get Blitz out of that cage. He'll kill someone before you pull the leash." Ryder didn't explode as David expected. He just looked at the notice, then at Blitz lying calmly behind the glass. 7 days, he muttered. "Who?" "We have 7 days." Meredith looked at him, knowing exactly what he was thinking. "You're really going to try?" Ryder folded the paper, tucked it into his leather jacket. "I'm not going to try," he said quietly. "I'm going to do it." David gave a nervous, bitter laugh. "You're insane. This isn't your Rocco. Blitz doesn't love you. He's just watching. He doesn't trust anyone." Ryder turned, gray eyes cold but not hostile. "I've lived my whole life around things more dangerous than this," he said. "And I'm still here because I know how to read instinct." David had no reply. Meredith stepped closer, voice low so only Ryder heard. "If you commit, you have to be here every single day. No skipping, no late, no distraction. You have to make Blitz trust you more than he fears the world out there." Ryder nodded instantly, without a second's hesitation. "I'll be here," he said, "from now until the last minute." Meredith studied him, trying to decide if this was an impulsive old biker clinging to ghosts, or the only right thing in the room. She found her answer when Blitz suddenly stood in his kennel, walked to the bars and let out a small whine, not a growl, not a threat. "The sound of a creature sensing change in the air," Meredith whispered. "No one has ever made him change this fast. No one." Ryder looked only at Blitz. "He chose to live," he said. "I'm just helping him remember how." David gripped the desk edge. "I'm still against it. We're talking about a dog that attacked 3 people. If he gets out of control, the blame falls on me. On Meredith, on this whole shelter." Meredith turned to David. "You think we have another choice?" David fell silent. All three looked at Blitz. The dog stood still, golden eyes no longer filled with rage but with something probing, expectant, and afraid. The fear of a creature betrayed by every human it was ever handed to. A fear Ryder recognized as clearly as his own palm, because he'd carried the same fear for 10 years. Ryder stepped to the cage. Blitz didn't back away, didn't growl. He just sniffed lightly, as if weighing Ryder's presence. Ryder placed 2 fingers on the bar, inches from Blitz's head. 7 days, he said softly. We'll make it. Blitz didn't answer, but his ears twitched, and his body leaned slightly toward Ryder, a movement so subtle an outsider would miss it. But Ryder saw, Meredith saw, and both understood what it meant. David swallowed hard, staring as if witnessing something impossible. You're all crazy, he muttered, and walked away. Meredith stood beside Ryder, in silence for a few seconds. If you fail, she said softly, he dies. Ryder answered, voice like forged steel. Then I won't fail. He stood, adjusted his jacket, and left isolation with the calm stride of a man who had chosen his path. And as Blitz watched him go, not with desperate eyes, but with the gaze of someone who had just found his first real chance to live after years, Meredith knew the battle had officially begun. Ryder began the first day of the life or death week by parking his battered old truck right next to the shelter entrance and sleeping in it, curled inside his faded leather jacket against the Bakersfield night chill. He didn't do it because he had nowhere else to go. He did it because every minute counted, and because he didn't want Blitz to wake up without him there. Before dawn could tear the sky open, Ryder was already standing in front of Blitz's kennel. The dog was awake, golden eyes glowing in the dim light. No growling, no pacing, just watching him, as if waiting to see what he would do today. Ryder started the first desensitization exercise. He didn't touch the kennel, didn't rush. He simply held out an object in front of Blitz, an old leather muzzle attached to a long wooden handle, so the dog could sniff from a safe distance. Blitz reacted on pure fighting instinct. He jerked back, let out a low growl, then circled. Ryder said nothing, just left the muzzle where it was and kept his breathing even. When Blitz edged half a step closer, Ryder murmured in a voice low and warm like wind over stone. Good boy, steady. The dog's breathing slowed. He sniffed the air lightly. He didn't touch it, but he didn't attack either. A small but crucial victory. Meredith stood behind the glass, arms wrapped around her clipboard, unable to write a single word. I can't believe it, she whispered. Ryder kept going. He turned sideways, avoiding direct eye contact, so Blitz wouldn't feel challenged. He set the muzzle on the floor, sat in his chair, and extended one hand at a 45-degree angle, palm down, no pressure. This was how you taught dogs whose trust had been destroyed. Never demand contact, only wait for them to choose it. Blitz paced, the first step still rigid, but every time Ryder spoke, the dog's body lowered a fraction. 20 minutes later, Blitz dipped his head, sniffed the muzzle, then looked up at Ryder as if asking, is this the thing that used to hurt me? Ryder's voice dropped softer. Nobody's gonna hurt you again. For the first time, Blitz didn't growl when Ryder scooted the chair a little closer. By late morning, Ryder let one finger brush the very top of Blitz's nose, a touch as light as a bird's wing. Blitz flinched and stepped back, but he didn't explode. He just stared, pupils wide. Not the reaction of a terrified animal, but of a creature relearning what it felt like to be touched without pain. Meredith nearly dropped her clipboard. My God, he let you touch him. Ryder gave the slightest nod, eyes still down. He knew that moment was fragile as spider silk. He wasn't going to ruin it with human excitement. Day 2, Ryder continued with the muzzle. This time, Blitz sniffed longer. When Ryder gently placed a hand on top of the kennel bars, Blitz didn't charge. He stepped closer. Ryder used his voice as the only reward. No food, no toys, because dogs that had been brutalized often trusted nothing except the voice of the one person they decided to believe in. Good boy, easy, I'm here. Those words became the new rhythm of isolation. David still objected, but when he saw Blitz move toward Ryder without growling, he started staying quiet more often. Not supportive, but no longer fighting it tooth and nail. I don't get why he picked you, David muttered. He never picked anybody, Ryder answered. He didn't pick me. He's picking a chance. Day 3, Ryder introduced the leash. He didn't go inside, just let Blitz see the lead from a distance. Blitz growled a little, then backed up. Ryder didn't push. He set the leash down, sat beside it, and let Blitz adapt at his own pace. The low, warm voice stayed steady. Easy. Not gonna hurt you. Blitz approached, sniffed the leash and rested his nose on it, then pulled away, then rested it again. Ryder knew that was the first step toward something huge, the desire to try trusting. That afternoon, when David brought food and dropped his keys again, the metallic crash rang out. Blitz jolted like he'd been shocked, but this time he didn't attack. He bolted straight toward Ryder, not to bite, not to threaten, but seeking shelter from the ghost of memory. Ryder extended his hand without touching the dog, just holding it there, so Blitz knew he was present. It's okay, boy. I got you. Meredith stood frozen. Holy hell. He ran to you, like you're his safe place. Ryder didn't look at her, but his eyes softened as Blitz gradually calmed. He's still terrified of loud noises, Ryder said, but he's choosing how to face that fear, and he wants me there when he does it. Day 4, Blitz let Ryder touch his nose a second time, a fifth, a seventh, no more flinching. Day 5, he allowed a touch to the cheek. Day 6, Blitz sat on the first spoken sits. Day 7, Blitz rested his head on Ryder's knee for just a few seconds before pulling back as if embarrassed by his own intimacy. For a dog that had been used as a weapon, that act was no different than handing over his heart. Ryder sat motionless, hand resting lightly on the floor, not reaching for Blitz so he wouldn't break the moment. But he felt it clearly. The dog was opening a door he'd slammed shut years ago. A little more each day, a little more with every breath. And by the end of the week, when Blitz walked over on his own and sat in front of him, no growling, no fear, just looking with eyes full of questions and hope, Ryder knew the hardest thing had already happened. Blitz had started to trust him, not completely, not absolutely, but enough to step into the world, and enough for Ryder to believe they could both survive the final test. That evening, after the 7th day of the life-or-death training, Meredith found Ryder sitting alone in front of Blitz's kennel, back against the wall, the sickly fluorescent light washing exhaustion and resolve across his face. Blitz was asleep, breathing evenly, head on his forepaws like a warrior finally allowed to rest after years without peace. Meredith sat beside Ryder, keeping enough distance so he wouldn't feel crowded. I still don't get it, she said softly. Why throw away your whole private life to save him? Ryder was quiet a long time, then exhaled like he was unlocking a prison door inside his chest. You know why I left the Hells Angels? Meredith shook her head. Ryder stared somewhere far beyond the concrete walls, farther than the flickering lights. Rocco died because of me, he said, voice raw like it had been scraped from the inside. That night in Fresno when the Diablo riders ambushed us, I made him choose between living and dying. Meredith turned fully toward him. Ryder went on, slow, each word dragged across a wound that had never healed. I told him, stay, but a guy behind me raised a shotgun. I turned too slow. Rocco saw it first. He broke the command. He jumped in front of me. Ryder's throat caught. He pulled a hand from his knee and covered his face, as if afraid someone would see the collapse spreading.
I heard the blast.
He fell right at my feet. If I hadn't been careless, if I'd scanned better, he wouldn't have died. Meredith didn't interrupt. She just waited. Ryder continued, voice low like graphite. I buried him with my bare hands. Then I walked away from the club, from everyone, from life, because I believed I gave the wrong order. I believed I betrayed the most loyal creature I ever knew. He gave a bitter, self-loathing half-smile. For 10 years, every single night I hear him whine in my dreams. Meredith clutched the file in her lap, hesitated, then said, maybe, you got it wrong. Ryder turned gray eyes stretched between old fear and a flicker of hope. Meredith stood, went to the office, came back with a thin yellow folder. I made a call, she said. Bentley, he was the mechanic in Fresno Chapter. He rode with the group that night. Ryder sat bolt upright like someone had yanked his spine. Bentley's still alive. Yeah, and he told me something you never knew. Meredith opened the folder. He said Rocco didn't break the command. Ryder's brow creased, lips dry. Meredith read, Bentley says he saw it clear. Before the shot. You never gave another order. You didn't have time. You just started turning. The stay you gave earlier was too long ago for the dog to follow when the situation changed. Ryder trembled faintly, like a cold wind had cut through his jacket. Meredith lowered the paper and looked him dead in the eye. Rocco didn't die because of you. He jumped because he loved you. Ryder squeezed his eyes shut, but tears spilled anyway. Not weak tears. The tears of a man who'd sentenced himself for 10 years, and just learned he was innocent. He bowed his head, hands braced on the floor, shoulders shaking as he fought not to collapse. God, he whispered, voice cracking. 10 years. I hated myself for 10 damn years. Meredith knelt beside him, not touching, just there like an anchor for a man coming apart. You carried that pain too long, she said. Way too long. Ryder covered his face, but the sobs caught in his throat. He tried to breathe, but the air came in broken pieces, as if his body had forgotten how to accept relief. Then a small sound, a soft sniff. Ryder opened his eyes and saw Blitz standing pressed against the bars, nose wedged in the gap, golden eyes locked on him. No growl, no tension, no fear. Just watching, trying to understand the pain pouring out of the man's soul. Ryder wiped his eyes, hands still shaking. He stood, walked over. Kid, he said, voice still shredded. Blitz didn't back away. He stepped closer, head tilted, ears pricked as if listening to something not with ears, but with heart. He knew. He felt it. The dog that had been beaten, betrayed, taught that humans were the enemy, was now stepping toward a man's pain, as if to share the weight. Meredith felt her throat close. He knows you're hurting, she said, even though humans hurt him more than anyone ever could. Blitz looked at Ryder through the bars, and Ryder looked back, two broken souls meeting under the harsh white light. And in that moment, Ryder understood. Their connection wasn't random. Not skill, not voice, not training language. It was because they were terrifyingly alike. Both lost the ones they loved to violence. Both blamed themselves. Both lived as ghosts. Ryder raised his hand to the bar, not touching Blitz, just close. Blitz pressed his nose to it, as if confirming, I'm here. For the first time in 10 years, Ryder let the tears fall uncovered, unashamed. And Blitz, the dog that once wanted to kill the world, stood still, watching him, and lowered his head the way Rocco once did when he wanted to say, you're not alone. In that cramped space under white lights and antiseptic smell, Ryder Maddox was finally released from the 10-year sentence that had haunted his sleep. And Blitz, in the only way a wounded soul could, became the first witness to that release. The next day when Meredith opened the isolation door, she found Ryder standing in front of Blitz's kennel with an unusual calm on his face. Not the calm of someone no longer afraid, but of someone who had touched the deepest truth and decided to stop running from it. Blitz stood behind the bars, body taut as a bowstring, golden eyes tracking every breath Ryder took, sensing the shift coiling inside the man. Meredith stepped closer and saw the look in Ryder's eyes was different now. It held more than determination. There was surrender to what he knew he had to do. What are you going to do? She asked, voice dropping with the premonition that something huge was about to happen. Ryder didn't turn, eyes fixed on Blitz. Time to find out, he said. I need to know how far he really trusts me. Meredith's eyes went wide. You can't. You're thinking of going in there, alone? Ryder gave a small nod. No hesitation, no tremor. If he wants to kill me, he said, voice low like a contained growl, I'll accept it. Meredith opened her mouth to stop him, but Ryder raised a hand. Then he unlatched the kennel door. The metallic click made Blitz jerk hard. The first growl ripped from his throat like the hiss of an animal shoved back into its past. Past full of chains dragging shock collars, drunken men screaming before kicking ribs out of alignment. Ryder stepped inside. Slow, silent steps. The door closed behind him with a final clack. No way back. Meredith pressed a hand to her mouth, heart hanging by a thread. Blitz backed into the corner, then launched at Ryder like the old reflex, jaws open, fangs bared, growl vibrating the air. But Ryder didn't dodge. He didn't raise an arm to guard, didn't turn to protect his throat, didn't try to block at all. He simply knelt, slowly, as if laying down every last weapon he had left. Blitz skidded to a stop less than 2 feet away, body shaking like it might detonate, eyes wild with the chaos of kill or be killed. Ryder lifted his head, not meeting the dog's eyes, just looking at the floor beneath his muzzle. His voice came out hoarse, every word punching through the thick air. I was left behind too. I get it. Blitz froze, just for a heartbeat. But that heartbeat was enough for Ryder to know he'd hit the deepest place, the place where fear and pain had built armor no one else could pierce. I know how it feels, Ryder went on, voice trembling with emotion, but not fear, to be beaten, screamed at, treated like trash, left in the dark, betrayed by the very people you trusted. Blitz growled low in his throat, no longer a threat but the sound of memories crashing down. Ryder placed his open palm on the floor, clear surrender. If you want to bite me, he whispered, I'll take it. Meredith couldn't breathe. She clutched her chest, terrified that in one more second Blitz would tear Ryder apart right in front of her. Blitz growled again, but the sound warped, like he was fighting something inside. He took one more step, close enough for his hot breath to hit Ryder's face. Ryder didn't blink. But before you do, he said slowly, know one thing, I'm not leaving you. A small sound escaped Blitz, a hoarse whine tangled in ragged breathing, a reaction that had no place in a cartel war dog taught that weakness meant death. He tilted his head, ears drooping, body still wired tight. Ryder drew a deep breath and whispered, nobody's gonna touch you again, nobody's gonna hit you, nobody's gonna abandon you. I'm here. And then the impossible happened. Blitz stepped forward, each step heavy like dragging a lifetime of wounds, until his chest touched Ryder's knee. Ryder didn't move, didn't reach to pet. He let Blitz decide. Blitz lifted his head and touched his nose to Ryder's chest, just for a second, fragile, trembling. A touch that meant more than any cage-rattling charge he'd ever done. Conscious surrender, absolute trust. Blitz lowered his head fully onto Ryder's chest, inch by inch, testing whether this would earn him a beating, a slap, a shock. Nothing happened. Just Ryder's steady breathing, hands still palm down on the floor, demanding nothing. Ryder closed his eyes. Good boy, kid, he whispered, voice breaking. I'm here. Blitz closed his eyes, too. In that moment, man and dog were one soul torn to shreds that had finally found where it belonged. Meredith raised a hand to her mouth, tears spilling as she witnessed something she'd never seen in 10 years on the job. My God, she whispered. That soul meeting soul. And inside that small kennel under cold white light, Ryder Maddox held Blitz not with arms, but with the complete peace he offered, letting the dog know that this time, his trust would not be thrown away. No longer a cartel war dog, no longer an abused child, no longer a living corpse behind bars. For the first time in his life, Blitz was safe, and Ryder, for the first time in 10 years, was no longer alone. That night, the Kern Valley sky turned on a dime. A few hours earlier, it had been a soft orange sunset. By midnight, black clouds swallowed everything. Wind screamed across the shelter's tin roof, dragging the heavy smell of wet earth, and a dread like the whole valley was about to collapse. Ryder was dozing in the truck, still parked against the shelter door like he had every night for a week, when the first thunderclap exploded overhead. It cracked sharp and clean, exactly like the shotgun blast he'd heard in Fresno 10 years ago. Ryder jolted awake, heart hammering, mind still half in the past. Then he heard the second sound, a long, shrill metallic screech, not thunder but metal slamming metal. His stomach dropped. Ryder bolted from the truck, shoved the shelter door open, and sprinted to isolation. Blitz was no longer curled in the corner. He stood in the middle of the kennel, body seizing, tail clamped, ears pinned, full-blown panic mode. Every thunderclap made him flinch like a hooked fish. In his eyes, Ryder saw exactly what he'd feared most. PTSD flashback, not fear of strangers, not fight reflex, but the memory of being shocked inside that metal drum, where thunder sounded exactly like the lid being yanked off before the drunk owner kicked his ribs and jammed the collar. Blitz, Ryder called, but his voice drowned in the storm roaring over the tin roof. Then the third thunderclap tore the sky. Blitz reacted like someone had thrown him back into hell. He crashed into the kennel door so hard the hinges rattled. The second crash loosened the latch. The third crack. The latch gave. Ryder lunged but was too late. A dog with an aggressive record loose in a storm? To the sheriff's department, it was the perfect justification to open fire. Meredith burst out the door and planted herself in front of Sheriff Dalton, the same man who hated bikers with a passion and treated every dog labeled dangerous like trash that needed removing. You are not shooting him, Meredith screamed, rain mixing with tears. He's not attacking anyone. He has PTSD. You'll be murdering a terrified animal, not a vicious one. Dalton raised an eyebrow. PTSD is for humans. This is a wild animal. Step aside. Meredith spun toward Ryder, voice breaking with panic. Please, you have to get there before them. You have to find Blitz before they do. Ryder met her eyes for a split second. Pure desperation, but also pure trust. He nodded once, turned, and vanished into the black tree line like a shadow. Rain hammered his face like thousands of needles. But Ryder didn't slow. He was used to pain. What he wasn't used to and would never accept was losing another life to human fear. The dirt road up the mountain had turned into a slick mud river, but Ryder spotted Blitz's tracks instantly. Deep prints with weight thrown forward, classic panicked flight. He dropped low, following the splattered mud and freshly broken branches. "Blitz," Ryder panted. "You ran far, kid, but I'm coming." Then another thunderclap split the sky. This time Ryder stopped, not from fear of nature, but because he knew Blitz would react. And sure enough, from far off came broken, frantic barking. Not warning barks, but desperate ones. Ryder veered instantly toward the sound. "I hear you, kid. I'm coming." But down the hill, Sheriff Dalton and David heard it too. "East side," Dalton barked. "Move. He's heading up the mountain. Let me fire a warning shot," David gasped. "No." Meredith grabbed the barrel. Dalton shoved her aside and the whole flashlight-wielding pack charged into the woods like a hunting party. Ryder heard their heavy boots behind him and pushed harder. He had to get there first. Everything inside him screamed that Blitz wasn't fighting anyone. He was fighting memories. The storm kept detonating. Every thunderclap was a knife in Blitz's nerves, and in Ryder's heart. He remembered the night Rocco broke command to save him, the smell of wet earth, the rain, the gunshot, the loyal dog's dying whine. This time, Ryder growled through clenched teeth. "Nobody else dies." The higher he climbed, the narrower the trail became. The Kern Valley mountainside rose like a crouched beast, with only one narrow path to the ridge. Blitz would choose that way. Wounded animals always run high to survey threats, and Blitz had been trained. A long pained howl drifted down from above. Ryder sprinted. Mud splashed under his boots. Then he saw it, a massive pine split by lightning, fallen across the trail. Behind it, deep claw marks in the ground, paw prints spinning in panicked circles. Blitz had tried to turn back, but couldn't find the old path. "You're boxed in," Ryder said, looking up the only route left, a near vertical slope to a narrow ledge. Below, the sheriff's flashlights were closing fast. Ryder scrambled up the muddy wall, slipping several times but clawing roots and rocks to stay upright. When he reached the top, he heard ragged, heaving breathing. Then he saw Blitz. The dog stood on a knife-edge rock outcrop, back to a sheer drop that disappeared into black nothing, paws sliding in the mud. Every thunderclap jerked his whole body, fangs bared but eyes pure terror, not rage. "Kid," Ryder whispered, heart squeezing. "You're scared. I know. I'm here." But before Ryder could take another step, a shout exploded from below. "Rees, do not approach that dog." Ryder spun and saw Dalton and David climbing the slope, guns drawn, flashlights blinding Blitz. "That dog is dangerous," Dalton roared. "Back off, Maddox." Blitz growled at the lights and yelling, not attacking, just the sound of something cornered. Ryder threw his arms wide, shielding Blitz, and yelled back. "Nobody shoots him," Dalton bellowed. "He'll attack you." Ryder stepped backward toward Blitz, placing himself squarely between the dog and the muzzle. "No, he'll run, or he'll die. But he won't attack. He's just scared." Meredith appeared behind the sheriff, gasping from the climb. "Let him talk to him. Dalton, please." Dalton raised the pistol higher, flashlight beam cutting through the rain like a blade. "No, we do this by the book." But Ryder wasn't listening anymore, because he saw Blitz shaking violently, eyes locked on the flashlight like it was his past incarnate, and from that narrow ridge every direction was death. Below, the sheriff advancing with a gun. Behind, the abyss. Between those three walls, only Ryder and the choice he made now. And that was the moment every path converged into one razor-thin line, where Blitz's life or death rested in the hands of the one man the dog had chosen to trust. Blitz teetered on the narrow ledge, the void behind him swallowing everything into howling wind and darkness. The blinding flashlight and Dalton's pistol in front. A cold metallic clack rang out, the sound of a round being chambered, sealing every escape. Blitz jerked hard, took half a step back, hind paws skidding on thin mud. One more slip and the dog would plummet down the mountainside and vanish forever. Ryder knew it, and he knew something else that made every muscle in his body coil like steel cable. Blitz wasn't growling to attack. He was begging. He was breaking. He was trapped. And if anyone could still hear his heartbeat right now, it was only Ryder. Dalton leveled the gun, eyes narrowed against the rain glare. "Maddox, get back," he ordered. "That dog is dangerous. One more step and I fire." Ryder walked straight into the beam, unflinching. "If you're gonna shoot him," he said, voice low like falling rock, Shoot me first. Dalton froze for half a heartbeat. Don't be insane. Move. But Ryder took another step, planting himself fully between Blitz and the barrel. He spread his arms to show he was unarmed, and his voice cracked like thunder without a tremor. Nobody shoots him, not in front of me. Blitz let out a long, hoarse, heartbreaking whine, not a threat, but the sound of a creature terrified to the point of shattering. Ryder didn't turn, but he knew those eyes. Blitz staring at him, clinging to him like the last life raft in a hostile ocean. David, panting behind, tried to make the sheriff understand. Dalton, look at him. He's not charging. He's not attacking anyone. He's shaking. Dalton snarled. He's dangerous. He's not dangerous. Meredith cut in, voice exploding with fear. He has PTSD. He's backing away, not advancing. If he wanted to attack, he would have done it already. And just as Dalton opened his mouth to argue, Blitz made a small, choked crying sound, a trembling whine, stretched like an overtight string about to snap. That sound, a discarded war dog begging, sent a chill through every person on the ridge. Ryder turned his head slightly, not looking directly at Blitz, just tilting an ear so the dog knew he was listening. Kid, he said so softly, yet every word carried through the storm. I'm here. Blitz panted frantically, legs barely holding him up. I'm here, Ryder repeated, slow and warm. Then he switched languages. The languages Blitz had been forced to obey during his cruelest years. But in Ryder's mouth, they weren't violent commands. They were bridges home. Sits. Ryder's voice low and steady. Blitz jerked. Ears shot up. He didn't sit, but he heard. He recognized. Ryder softer, almost a lullaby. Sits. Guter Junge. Blitz lifted a front paw, set it down, lifted it again, but he stopped backing toward the edge. Didn't advance on Dalton, didn't look at the gun, only looked at Ryder. Dalton lowered the pistol slightly, not because he believed, but because he was starting to doubt what he thought he knew. The kill it now dog was shaking like a child. Ryder switched to Spanish, voice like warm breath in the cold storm. Fermi, conmigo. Blitz let out another whine, this one not hopeless but trying to hold on to that thread, the only thread still tying him to the world. Ryder took half a step closer, slow as if every centimeter could send Blitz over the cliff. Look at me, Ryder whispered. Not the thunder, not his gun. Me. Blitz tried and he did it. Those golden eyes shifted from blind panic at the void to Ryder. That look, desperate, agonized but clinging, made David choke. Jesus, he whispered. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He's asking for help. Dalton's jaw worked, grip loosening. If you trust me, Ryder said, voice so deep and warm it drowned the storm for a moment. Come here. He used only his voice. No hand out, no demand for steps, just opened an invisible door between two souls. Kommer, Ryder said, next in German. One single command that had once forced Blitz into fire, blood, and violence his whole life as a weapon. But now, in Ryder's voice, it wasn't a battle order, it was an invitation home. Blitz stepped, one small step, but the most important step of his life, then another, angling sideways, away from Dalton's gun. Ryder saw it and his heart clenched. Blitz wasn't advancing to attack, he was coming to hide in him, to find safety. The dog shook so hard his shoulders looked ready to break, but he kept coming, fighting for balance on the narrow ledge. Ryder's mouth trembled with rising emotion, but his voice stayed rock solid. Good boy, just like that. When Blitz was close enough that Ryder could reach him, he knelt slowly, placed one hand on the ground, kept his body low so the dog wouldn't feel threatened. Blitz pressed his head into Ryder's shoulder, not hard like in the kennel, but gentle as a fragile vow. Don't leave me. Meredith burst into tears. David covered his mouth. Dalton lowered the gun all the way, heart pounding out of his chest. Ryder slipped one arm around Blitz's neck, not tight, just enough to keep him from slipping off the edge. Good job, kid, he whispered, their warm breath mingling in the sheet of rain. Dalton took a step, but Ryder raised a warning hand. Slow, don't spook him. When Dalton and David drew near, Blitz gave a small fearful growl, but Ryder murmured, it's okay, I'm here. Blitz stood still, didn't attack, didn't charge, didn't bolt. He chose to stand beside Ryder. That was enough for Dalton to realize everything he'd believed about this dog, about Ryder, was wrong. All right, Ryder said, rising slowly, one hand resting on Blitz's back. We're taking him home. Dalton inhaled, then nodded. No shots fired, no shouting, no leash yanked. They backed off, letting Ryder and Blitz lead. The dog shook like a leaf, but he walked, and more importantly, he walked beside Ryder. When they descended the slope, Meredith ran up, tears streaming in the rain, dropped to her knees and hugged Blitz like a child, snatched from death's scythe. Blitz rested his head on her shoulder, no growl, just heavy breathing. My God. Meredith choked. He's alive. Ryder crouched, pressed his forehead to Blitz's. Told you I'd find you, he whispered, voice breaking. And that night, as the storm faded over Kern Valley, a tortured dog chose life. A man who had buried himself in guilt found redemption, and Sheriff Dalton and David, two men who had seen only a monster, witnessed a moment no one could argue with. What stood before them was not a beast. It was two survivors who had found each other on the edge of death. The next morning, after the storm had rolled out of Kern Valley, thin gray clouds still streaked the mountain peaks, but that calm couldn't erase the fact that Blitz still faced a death sentence. The county had scheduled a hearing at Bakersfield City Hall to decide the dog's fate after last night's escape. Word spread like wildfire. A dangerous dog breaks out in a storm. Sheriff's pursuit. A Hells Angel steps in front of a gun. The story needed only a headline to pack City Hall to the rafters. Meredith sat in the front row, hands clasped tight, eyes locked on Ryder like he was her lifeline. David was there too, avoiding Ryder's gaze, but guilt written all over his face. Ryder walked into the hearing room with boots still caked in mountain mud, leather jacket heavy from last night's rain. He didn't lower his eyes, didn't beg, didn't plead. He simply walked to the podium when his name was called, like he was stepping onto a battlefield more familiar to him more than any room full of suits. Council Chairwoman Weissman adjusted her mic. Mr. Ryder Maddox, you have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 3 minutes to save a life he'd spent 7 days, 7 nights and part of his soul pulling back from the abyss. Ryder placed both hands on the podium, thumbs still scraped from sliding down the slope. He began, voice low, clear, unshaking. Blitz isn't a dangerous dog. Blitz is a victim. A few citizens in the back muttered protests. He's attacked people. We can't have that animal in our community. Ryder kept his gaze steady. The people saying that, he glanced back at the crowd, have never looked him in the eye. He told them Blitz's file, 3 abusive owners, shock collars, broken ribs, knife wounds, the metal drum prison. He told them about the storm, how thunder sent Blitz back into memories of torture. He told them about the moment the dog shook on that ledge, more afraid of thunder than the gun pointed at him. He didn't make it pitiful. He didn't use pretty words. He just told the truth. He didn't charge anyone when the sheriff had a gun on him, Ryder said, looking straight at Dalton sitting below. He backed away. He shook. He asked for help. I was there. I saw him choose not to be violent. Dalton looked away. The room went quiet for several seconds. Then a woman stood, voice tight, but he could hurt a child. Ryder turned, met her eyes. If a child was shocked from neck to spine, locked in a metal drum for years, beaten every day. He paused so every word landed. Do you think that child would trust people right away? The entire room fell silent. Not agreement, silence of people forced to think. Meredith looked at Ryder, heart twisting at how simple and devastating the question was. The panel exchanged glances. Weissman said, however sympathetic your story, county law is clear on dangerous animals, unless there is further compelling. She never finished. A deep, earth-shaking roar rolled through City Hall's walls. Not a gunshot, not thunder, the synchronized growl of dozens of Harley-Davidsons firing up outside, hundreds of iron horses breathing in perfect unison. The whole room whipped around. People shifted in their seats. 2 security officers hurried to the doors like they were about to face a riot. Ryder only closed his eyes for half a second. He knew that sound, and he knew who made it. The doors flew open. Daylight poured in along with a sight that stunned the entire panel silent. More than 80 Hells Angels Fresno Chapter members marched up the steps and formed 2 perfect lines like a silent army. No one revved, but the echo of their pipes still vibrated the air like the aftershock of an earthquake. Massive men in leather vests, steel gray hair, thick beards, ink covering every inch of skin, but no weapons, no shouting. They simply stood numerous, disciplined and utterly silent like a living wall. One of them, a tall man with silver hair and a braid, stepped forward and handed security a thick folder. Animal rescue certifications from 1989 to present, and he pulled out an envelope. Sworn statements from people Maddox has saved, including 2 kids in the 2011 trailer park fire. Another biker held up a phone, voice calm but firm. Here's video of Maddox dragging a crash victim out of a Fresno alley during a gas explosion. There was a dog too. Nobody knew he risked his life for it. Another held up photos. Ryder nursing a pit bull with a broken leg. A dog the Diablo riders had dumped in a landfill. The crowd murmured. Whispers spread like ripples. They came for him. They're not starting trouble. They look like they're protecting him. But what made the panel sit up straight wasn't the numbers. It was the biker's demeanor. Not aggressive, not coercive, just standing behind Ryder like witnesses instead of threats. Meredith shot to her feet, hand over mouth, tears rising. David stared at the floor as a biker rested a hand on his shoulder and said quietly, "You did good, kid. Now let us handle the rest." Dalton stood, pressure plain on his face. He looked at Ryder, then at Blitz trembling lightly at Meredith's feet, then out the doors at the bikers standing like stone guardians over one life. Finally, Weissman banged the gavel. "We need 5 minutes." The room cleared. 5 minutes of silence. 5 minutes that felt like a lifetime. When they returned, Weissman held the decision voice clearer than before. Given the extraordinary circumstances, history of abuse and testimony from multiple sources, she looked at Ryder, then at Blitz. "Blitz will not be euthanized." A collective exhale swept the room like warm wind. Meredith broke down sobbing, hugging Blitz tight. Ryder closed his eyes, shoulders dropping as if the heaviest rock of his life had just rolled away. But Weissman wasn't finished. "However, for public safety, Blitz will be relocated to a sanctuary outside Bakersfield under special supervision." She paused, then enunciated every word. "That supervision will be performed by Mr. Ryder Maddox." Ryder opened his eyes. In that moment he said nothing, but light flared in them, the light of a man who had just pulled a soul back from death's grip. Meredith threw her arms around him, tears soaking his jacket. Blitz nudged Ryder's leg, tail giving its first real wag since Ryder had known him. Outside City Hall, 80 Hells Angels fired up. The thunder of Harleys rose like a song of freedom, not to intimidate, but to welcome a survivor home. After the hearing, no one said it out loud, but everyone knew 3 lives, Ryder's, Blitz's and Meredith's, had just turned the page. 2 days later, when the paperwork was officially approved, Meredith stood in the shelter's backyard, holding a brand new leash sent overnight from a Sacramento rescue group one of the bikers had called. Blitz stood beside her, no longer shaking. He lifted his head when Ryder walked through the gate, familiar leather jacket slung over his shoulder, morning sun glinting off silver hair. "Ready, kid?" Ryder asked. Blitz wagged his tail, a small motion, but to him it was a revolution. Meredith laughed through sparkling tears. "I've never seen him wag his tail. Not like this." Ryder knelt and fastened the doggles, special goggles for dogs, onto Blitz's head. They'd sat unused in Ryder's truck trunk for 10 years, since the day Rocco died. He'd thought no one would ever wear them again. But when Blitz looked at him through those little lenses, Ryder's heart gave a strange sweet pang, like Rocco, but not Rocco's ghost. A new beginning, not a replacement. A blacked-out Harley Softail waited at the curb. Ryder secured the harness to the rear seat, so Blitz could ride steady. Blitz sniffed the seat, sniffed Ryder's jacket, then hopped up naturally, as if long highway miles had always run in his blood, and were only now waking up. Meredith watched, unable to hide her smile. "He was born to ride Harley." "Good thing," Ryder said, lightly touching Blitz's forehead, "because from now on he rides with me everywhere." What few people knew, because they chose not to advertise it, was that the very night after the hearing, those same 80-plus Hells Angels had returned to the shelter, not to make noise or flex muscle. They came with toolboxes, lumber, cement bags, paint buckets, LED lights, a welder and professional sound-deadening panels. In exactly 3 hours. 3 hours flat. The old kennel block where Blitz had lived was rebuilt floor to ceiling. New hinges, reinforced bars, thunderproofing so loud booms wouldn't rattle the walls anymore, drainage fixed. An older biker with silver hair down to his shoulders pressed a check into Meredith's hand. "From Fresno Chapter." She opened it. $15,000. "For the ones like Blitz," he said, "so they're never thrown away again." Meredith could only whisper a trembling thank you. And now, watching Ryder prepare to leave Bakersfield with Blitz, she felt her heart pulled 2 ways. Thrilled Blitz would live, aching because they were riding out of her life. Ryder pulled the choke. The Harley rumbled to life, deep, smooth, nothing like the storm that night on the mountain. Blitz flinched once, then settled the instant Ryder touched his head. "All good, kid," he murmured. the bike's note blending into the words like part of the sentence. Meredith rested a hand on the tank, voice soft but fierce. "Stay safe, both of you." Ryder nodded.
You too.
"And thank you for believing in me." Meredith wanted to say she believed in Blitz, but she knew the truth. Ryder had given Blitz a reason to believe again, and in the way he looked at Blitz, she knew Blitz had done the same for him. They left Bakersfield that afternoon, sun pouring final golden rays through the roadside trees. The road to Shaver Lake twisted like a gray ribbon around the mountainside. Cool wind, scent of young pine, Harley rumble mixing with whispering leaves. Blitz rode behind Ryder, body pressed to his back, no longer rigid with tension. Every oncoming car made him tense for a second, but Ryder just reached back and rubbed his chest. "I'm here," Ryder said into the wind. Blitz relaxed again. As they neared the lake, Shaver Lake's water flashed like scattered silver mirrors in the sunset. The sanctuary here wasn't a prison. It was healing ground among quiet pines where old wounds could finally fade. Ryder pulled up to the wooden gate. Blitz hopped down, shook himself, then ran a few happy circles like his body had finally been unchained. Meredith arrived minutes later with paperwork and Blitz's few belongings. Blitz trotted over, sniffed her hand, rested his head against her leg in goodbye. "He'll be okay," Ryder said, standing beside her. "He has me, and I have him." Meredith nodded, eyes red. "You deserve him." "No," Ryder corrected. Gaze on Blitz. "We deserve each other." And as if to prove it, Blitz trotted back, rose up and laid his head on Ryder's shoulder. The same gesture Rocco once used to say everything would be all right. But this time, in that touch, there was no pain, no haunting memories, no old battles to relive. Only the relief of two souls who had found each other, just when life seemed to have run out of roads. Ryder swung a leg over the Harley. Blitz jumped up behind like he'd been born for that seat. Meredith stood watching as Ryder thumbed the starter. The pipes growled, not the sound of nightmares, but the opening note of a new life. As the Harley rolled down the mountain road, Blitz rested his head on Ryder's shoulder, eyes half closed against the cool wind and the brand new peace in his heart. And so, beneath the blazing sunset over Shaver Lake, a biker who had buried himself in nightmares, and a dog whose soul had been torn apart, rode out of their past together, into the only thing either of them had left: family. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next emotional journey. See you in the next one, where every creature we save might just end up saving us.